Imagine walking through a quiet forest and spotting a trail of footprints. You bend down, expecting the usual paw prints or claw marks, but instead you find shapes so strange they look like symbols left behind in some secret language. That's the magic of animal footprints, tiny signatures of life that tell stories about creatures most of us never get to see. And some of these tracks are so unique, they're like works of art stamped into mud, sand, or snow. Today, we're diving into the top 10 animals with the most unusual and unforgettable footprints. Let's start with the camel. At first glance, its footprints look deceptively simple. Large, rounded, almost like someone pressed a giant dinner plate into the sand. But the design is genius. Instead of sharp hooves that sink into the desert, camels spread their weight with wide, leathery pads. This means their prints look more like flattened circles than hooves. Imagine walking across a beach with snowshoes. You barely leave a mark. Camels invented that trick long before we did. Now contrast that with the emu, Australia's giant, flightless bird. Their footprints resemble three-pronged forks stamped into the earth, each toe long and sharp. If you stumbled on one, you might mistake it for the mark of a dinosaur, and you wouldn't be far off. Emus are distant relatives of those prehistoric giants, and their tracks carry that ancient DNA frozen in time. But nothing says strange like the platypus. This creature already looks like an experiment gone wrong, but its tracks? Even weirder. On land, platypuses waddle awkwardly, dragging their webbed feet in a way that leaves prints shaped like little stars. Each step looks smeared, as though someone with a paintbrush dipped in mud dabbed the ground. If Sherlock Holmes ever saw those, he'd have to pause and ask, wait, what on earth walked here? Next comes the okapi, the shy cousin of the giraffe that hides in the forests of the Congo. Its tracks are a curious blend of cloven hooves and zebra-like daintiness. The hooves are narrow and leave a split print, almost like a deer's, but with a more delicate taper. For centuries, people thought okapis were mythical. If you found their prints in the forest before the animal was officially discovered, you might have sworn they belonged to a unicorn. If you want creepy, look at the giant anteater. Its footprints seem backward. That's because it walks on its knuckles, curling its massive claws inward to protect them. So when you find their prints, the toes point inward, opposite of what you'd expect. It looks like an animal was walking in reverse. Imagine the confusion of early trackers following a trail that seemed to lead nowhere, until the anteater appeared, lumbering forward with its strange gait. Equally puzzling are the tracks of the kangaroo. Unlike most animals, kangaroos use two modes of movement, hopping and tail propping. Their prints often show enormous elongated footmarks with a thick tail dragged down the center, like someone drew a line with a stick. Sometimes, when they hop fast, the tail vanishes from the picture, and you get pairs of massive, almost comical footprints spaced meters apart. It looks like an invisible giant was pogo sticking across the land. In icy places, the polar bear leaves prints that tell their own story. Unlike other bears, their paws are fur-covered and wide, spreading like a natural snowshoe. Their prints often include hair impressions, giving them a blurred, fuzzy look. In snow, They seem like ghostly smudges rather than sharp marks, as though the bear walked with slippers on. That softness hides the ferocity of the predator behind them. Speaking of unusual marks, the armadillo creates prints that look like tiny armored tanks have rolled through. Their clawed toes leave sharp punctures, but what sets them apart is the belly drag. Small species leave faint belly streaks between their tracks, giving the impression of a creature half walking, half sliding. If you didn't know better, you might imagine some strange reptile crawling out of prehistoric times. One of the most artistic sets of footprints belongs to the flamingo. Their long, webbed toes press into mud like stretched triangles. But the oddity is the symmetry. Flamingos often walk in shallow water, leaving behind neat repeated patterns that look almost designed. Their prints seem intentional, like the bird was decorating the shoreline with minimalist art. And finally, the crown jewel of bizarre footprints, the koala. Unlike other marsupials, koalas have two opposable thumbs on their front paws. This gives them prints that look eerily human, but with a twist. If you saw one in soft soil, you might think a child had been walking barefoot until you noticed the strange double thumb marks. In fact, forensic experts in Australia once confused koala tracks with human fingerprints at crime scenes. That's how uncanny they are. From desert to snow, swamp to jungle, these footprints remind us that every creature carries a hidden story in the way it walks. Some confuse us, some amaze us, and some make us laugh. But all of them prove one thing. The ground beneath our feet is a canvas, and animals are the artists we rarely notice. Next time you see a strange mark in the dirt, don't just step over it. Pause. Imagine the life that made it. Because sometimes the smallest print holds the biggest story.